I can't believe I'm actually doing this. Clothed entirely in black, ski mask over my face, I trudged through one of the black ravines that surrounded the university. I couldn't stop trembling. Did anyone see me? The August air was sweltering and the campus was sparsely populated. I was there the night before, too, to scope out the house of the guy I was supposed to kill, but the forest seemed much deeper now. My heart was racing. I thought I might pass out. No, it's okay. I haven't done anything illegal yet. I took half the payment, but I can always return it if I decide not to go through with the hit. Can I really kill someone? Stop thinking like that. You have to. Rent is due in 2 days and your full-time job barely covers your groceries. My thoughts ended as I started moving uphill in the woods. Okay, we're on the right track. I can see the lights of Mayfair Place. It wasn't easy climbing out of the ravine, but the physical challenge pulled me out of my head. I emerged into the quiet suburban neighborhood and shifted between 2 dark houses to the street nervously. I wasn't on Mayfair Place. I was on Mayfair Crescent. I had come out of the woods too early. Shit. I looked around in a cold sweat. No one was around. A stroke of luck. The way I'm dressed, they would certainly know I was up to no good. I moved through the low gloam of the crescent to arrive at Mayfair Place. The swell of cicadas and crickets in the air was deafening. There was the house. They were all large, but this one was second from the end of the short road. I walked through the bushes to avoid being bathed in street light. Mosquitoes buzzed about my eyes, hungrily trying to get under my balaclava. I shooed them off, but as I arrived at the house, the job was all I could think of. The lights in the house were all off. Another stroke of luck. Hopefully he was asleep. I was told he was in his 60s or 70s, and it was 2 a.m., so there was a good chance. I made my way to the back of the house. I had a plan. There were security stickers in the dull basement windows, but I knew most people who had those didn't actually pay for the service. If there was no alarm, then by smashing the basement window there was a lower chance of waking him. If an alarm did go off, I would smash a main floor window instead and get the job done quickly. I pulled the hunting knife from my belt and held the pommel over the basement window. I took a deep breath. My heart beat slowly and heavy. To my surprise, determined. In a swift motion, I broke the window and paused as the glass fell into the room below. There was no sound, no alarm, no shuffling inside. Success. It took a lot of upper body strength to climb through quietly, and the glass crunched under my boots as I fell to the basement floor. There was no going back now, and my heavy heart beat even harder in the lightless room. I pulled out the red light on my phone and took my first steps into the unfamiliar home. Red light is used in dark rooms for photo development at the longest visible wavelength. It is just barely enough light to see in absolute darkness. I moved slowly, my knife now withdrawn from its sheath. Bumping into anything could be disastrous, but slowly I found my way to the stairs. I tiptoed carefully up them, stepping where they connected with the wall and were least likely to creak, and timidly opened the door at the top of the stairs. The hinge whined subtly, and I held my breath. There was a noise up here, an intricate pattern of static and speaking, then music. It was a TV. I appeared to be in a kitchen. It was easier to see now as street light from outside flooded in the gaps in the blinds. The tile floor did not creak, and I followed the sound to a dark hallway on the far side of the kitchen. It was hardwood. If they were going to hear me, it would probably be now. I debated one last time about whether to proceed slowly, or rush in with a fury, or even to turn and leave. No. I just needed a picture of his body and I would make $25,000. That would be life-changing for me. I elected to move swiftly while still tiptoeing down the hall. It creaked, but perhaps it would still be masked by the TV. I gripped my knife tight and gnashed my teeth, trying to summon a violence that my target did not deserve as adrenaline frothed soppily from its gland. I rounded the corner, and there he was in a rocking chair, the dull glow of the TV illuminating his terrified face, turned around to behold me. I moved on him viciously as a first uncontrolled scream of surprise bubbled out of his lungs. My knife plunged into his chest. His hands pressed into my face weakly, but he didn't have the strength to fight a man in his late 20s. Powering through this inconvenience, I withdrew the blade and aimed for his neck this time. His screaming became a gurgling that would have shaken my soul had I not been so deep in the fury of the moment. A woman was screaming now somewhere. From a bed on the other side of the room, she was fleeing, but it didn't matter. I needed to get a picture. I just needed him dead to finish the job. He keeled over onto the shag carpet. Blood was spilling and pooling out of him, soaked up by the mange. I pulled out my phone, but my hands were trembling. I tried to steady them. The flash was on. Good. I put the knife back into my belt and used both hands to stabilize. Why was this so hard? My breathing was ragged and fast. I was so close to being done with these horrors. I snapped the picture, making sure his face was in the frame. Okay, good. I got it. A shotgun blast rung in the air. The skin of the left flank of my leg was torn off. It must have been the woman, but I was too in a frenzy to see her. I turned and bolted out of the room, determined to survive. No sense in going to the basement. I ran back to the kitchen, smashed the window and climbed awkwardly through the blinds, ripping them off the window as I fell onto the driveway, winded. Lights were turning on in the house now as a cacophony of wretched screaming rung in the air. Other lights in the neighborhood were turning on as well as I made my way around the house to the back into safety, the deep darkness of the wooded ravine. I kept going, heart still reeling, and finally the noise died, drowned out once again by the cicadas in the trees. My adrenaline died with it somewhat, and it was becoming impossible to walk, but I absolutely could not stop now. There would be police scouring these woods within the hour. Afraid of dogs, I climbed down through a small creek in the blackness, letting the water rush over my shotgun wounds and wash away the blood. 10 minutes later, I was back in my subdivision, and in another 8 minutes, I was inside my house. I collapsed as I closed and locked the door behind me and crawled into the bathroom. I crawled into the bathtub, finally feeling safe as uncontrolled sobbing began to overtake me. After taking 10 minutes to come to my senses, I attended to my injury. I chugged a bunch of Tylenol 3 for the pain and climbed back into the bath with tweezers. My left leg was full of holes, and with tweezers I picked shotgun pellets out of my waterlogged, softened skin. If I showed up at the hospital with a shotgun wound, well, that would certainly look suspicious. I applied cream around the wounds once out of the bath to prevent infection and stared at myself in the mirror. There was blood soaked into the pile of clothes that lay on the bathroom floor next to me. I would launder them tomorrow, or maybe just throw them out. I was now a murderer, yet the face who stared back at me in the mirror was still my own. It was the one I had seen my whole life, but somehow it was unrecognizable. Exhaustion eventually overtook me, and I collapsed into bed. 2 days later, I was working a shift at the paint store. It was a quiet day at the store, and I was working alone. $50,000 in Bitcoin sat in my wallet. I turned on my VPN and opened the Galley, the site on the deep web where I had sold my Hitman services. My first customer had posted a glowing review, going on at length about how I had killed a professor of his who kept giving him bad marks, and at a fraction of the cost of a regular hitman. The photo I had taken was posted to my page. Even though I had doubled my price, I was getting tons of job offers. Enough to quit this shit job here, even, perhaps. But I wasn't sure I wanted to do that ever again. I had never been able to escape the numb feeling of that night, and the paranoia that I would get caught. Although I kept reassuring myself that it was next to impossible. I wore gloves and covered my tracks, and I didn't know the guy, so it would be very hard to trace back to me. My phone screen lit up as a text from an unknown number came in. Fear welled up in me as I read the words, "I know what you did."